Ever feel like you're drowning in information?
Oh, yeah,
You
definitely.
just crave, like, some genuine understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we all want to be in the know, right?
For sure.
But sometimes it seems like the more we learn, the less we really get it.
It's easy to get lost out there.
So today we're going to change gears a bit.
Eh?
We're doing a deep dive into this incredible autobiography by Soko Morinaga Roshi.
Oh, wow, a Zen master, huh? He's
Yeah.
pretty well known.
Oh, yeah. Soko Morinaga Roshi was a true force. He lived during the mid to late 20th century, traveled the world teaching,
Right.
a prominent figure at Hanazono University, and a regular visitor to the Buddhist Society of London.
I've heard his name, but haven't really dug in.
Well, you're in for a treat, this book.
Yeah?
It's raw, it's funny, it's wise.
Like, what do you mean raw?
He holds nothing back, talks about his own struggles, stoddles on the path.
Makes him more relatable, I bet.
It's refreshing. He's not putting on a show, just a guy on a journey.
That's cool. So much more human, right?
And the way it's structured takes you right through it, from novice to intensive training, then becoming a master.
So we really get the full arc.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so captivating. He's not just some distant sage.
But someone who's walked the walk.
He gets it, the challenges, the doubts. Today we're going to pull out the golden nuggets from his teaching.
Golden nuggets, huh?
The stuff that can actually shift your perspective, especially when life throws those curveballs.
Oh, yeah, I like that. It's not just about learning stuff, but actually changing how we see things.
You got it. Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. Soko Roshi says there's this state of mind that surpasses cause and effect.
Surpassing cause and effect.
The usual way we think,
Yeah, we usually think if I do this, then that will happen.
Exactly, like a simple equation. But he's saying there's something beyond that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's he getting at there?
Well, he's warning us about getting trapped in this rigid cause and effect mentality. If we're always expecting a specific outcome for every action, we're setting ourselves up for a lot of disappointment.
That's true. Life rarely goes according to plan.
Exactly. And, it becomes a real problem when we face aging, illness, death.
The big stuff.
Yeah, the big stuff. Because those things, they don't really follow a neat cause and effect logic.
Right. So are you saying that we shouldn't even try to make good things happen?
Not at all. It's not about giving up on making positive changes, but it is about untangling our inner peace from being solely dependent on the results.
So it's more about the process than the outcome.
In a way, yeah. This book's almost like a love letter to living without expectations, fully present in each moment.
A love letter to the present moment. I dig that.
And to make this more concrete, he tells some incredible stories.
Like what?
Well, there's this one about Miss Okamoto, a nun who dedicated her life to service.
Sounds like a pretty good life.
She really did live a commendable life, very moral, conscientious, but then she gets diagnosed with cancer in her later years.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
And what's really striking is that she's not only terrified, but she's also deeply ashamed of being afraid.
I mean, that's understandable, right? To be scared of something so serious.
It is human, for sure. But what Soko Roshi points out is fascinating. He doesn't see it as a personal flaw,
Okay.
but rather as this imbalance. You see, despite her seemingly perfect life, there was this underlying tension.
Tension, like what kind?
This clenched effort. Like she was always doing good deeds, but always with the goal of racking up good karma.
Oh, I see. So it's like she's trying to control the outcome through good action.
Exactly. And Soko Roshi's insight is that even a life full of good deeds doesn't guarantee inner peace.
Wow. That's a powerful thought, especially for someone who dedicated their life to service.
It really makes you think, right? Are we just chasing external validation, or is there something deeper?
Yeah. Makes you wonder what really matters in the end.
And this leads us to this other powerful idea that Soko Roshi explores, staring death in the eye.
Okay, that's a bit intense.
I know, right? He says, without staring death in the eye as the perpetual reverse side of life, we cannot live life fully and completely.
I can see how that ties into not being attached to outcomes, but it's still a bit unsettling.
Sure, it's not the most comfortable topic, but think about it this way. Confronting death helps us grasp that everything is impermanent.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Nothing lasts forever, good or bad. And Soko Roshi observes that those who've lived very accomplished lives, they're often the most scared of decline.
Because their identity is so wrapped up in their achievements.
Bingo. The thought of losing those abilities, that status, it's terrifying.
Makes sense. If your whole life has been about building something, then losing it can be devastating.
It's like their sense of self is built on shaky ground.
So what's the alternative? How do we build on more solid ground?
Soko Roshi offers this radical shift in perspective. He says, True existence is birth and death, repeating itself instant by instant.
Birth and death happening constantly.
Not just a beginning and an end, but a continuous cycle. Every moment is a mini birth and death.
So we're constantly dying and being reborn.
In a way, yes. And the practice he suggests is so simple yet profound. Always now, just now, come into being. Always now, just now, give yourself to death.
It's like surrendering to the flow of things rather than resisting it.
Exactly. Accepting the ebb and flow of life as it is, not how we want it to be.
That takes a lot of courage, I think, to let go of that control.
And that leads perfectly into his discussion of the two types of dharma, the exhaustible and the inexhaustible.
Okay, 2 types of dharma. What's he talking about there?
Well, he says it's easy to get caught up in the tangible aspects of spirituality, like rituals or practices.
The things you can check off a list.
And in doing so, we might miss this deeper principle of emptiness.
Emptiness, isn't that kind of like nihilistic?
Not in this context. Here, emptiness means letting go of clinging and attachments. It's about recognizing that everything is interconnected and ever-changing.
So it's not about nothing existing, but about nothing staying fixed.
Precisely. Soko Roshi calls this fundamental ground of being inexhaustible dharma. It's the potential from which everything arises.
I see. So it's like the source, the wellspring.
And then there's exhaustible dharma, which encompasses all the forms and phenomena we experience in the world.
The stuff that's constantly changing, coming and going.
And here's the key. He quotes the Heart Sutra. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness exactly form.
They're one and the same.
Not two separate things. They're two sides of the same coin.
So it's about seeing them as intertwined.
And the danger is getting fixated on one or the other. If we only focus on the exhaustible, the forms.
We might end up like Miss Okamoto, scared of losing them.
Right, because those things are temporary. But if we swing too far the other way, focus only on emptiness.
We might become nihilistic. Like nothing matters anyway.
And that's not the answer either. So it's about navigating that middle
The
ground.
middle way.
He calls it the Dharma way of liberation, free from clinging to either extreme.
Sounds like walking a tightrope.
It's about finding that balance, that understanding that both sides are constantly interacting, forms dissolving back into emptiness, and emptiness giving rise to new forms.
That's a whole new way of seeing life.
And it ties back to that idea of birth and death, not as opposites, but as parts of this great life, dynamic and dancing lively.
It's a pretty beautiful way to put it, I have to admit.
But it's not some passive thing. Soko Roshi stresses that it takes serious effort to grasp this.
So it's not just about thinking about it, but actively changing our perspective.
Exactly. It's a deep internal shift. And it reminds me of Miss Okamoto towards the end of her life.
What happened?
Well, despite her fear, she seemed to have a profound change of heart. Her last words were, "Looking back, I have led a pretty stuffy life all these years, so I think I'll just take a ball and go out and play in the woods now."
Wow. What a shift. From all that striving to just wanting to play.
And that's what Soko Roshi calls the samadhi of play.
Samadhi of play.
Samadhi basically means a state of deep concentration, of absorption. So samadhi of play is about doing something purely for the joy of it, like a child lost in their own world.
Not for any reward or recognition.
Exactly. And it's not about rejecting responsibilities. It's about seeing the game for what it is.
Knowing the rules are temporary, that the game will eventually end.
And yet still playing with your whole heart.
That's deep. So how do we actually cultivate this samadhi of play?
Well, Soko Roshi emphasizes that it all starts within. He says that our own hearts are the womb from which everything originates.
Our own heart.
Each of us, he says, is a manifestation of the Buddha. It's not some distant ideal, but something within each of us.
So we have to look inwards to find it.
It's like that Zen teaching of investigating your own body and heart to understand the universe.
So it's not about seeking answers externally, but realizing the truth that's already there.
And in sharing his story, Soko Roshi hopes to inspire us to live each moment with care.
To really appreciate that this is the great, dynamic, lively, dancing life.
So, as we wrap up, what's the big takeaway here? It's about understanding the dance between the temporary and the eternal.
The exhaustible and inexhaustible.
It's not about escaping life, but about shifting our perspective so we can embrace it fully right now.
This isn't just information overload, right?
Yeah.
This is knowledge that can change how we live.
Exactly. So, here's a thought for you, our listener. How can you bring this samadhi of play into your own life?
Can you approach challenges and joys with that same sense of freedom?
Can recognizing the impermanence of everything actually liberate you to be more present?
And maybe, just maybe, can staring death in the eye, not with fear, but with honesty, make you feel more alive than ever?
Something to ponder.
A lot to ponder.